Hi, I'm Mellisa Smith.
I'm Spencer Ziegler, and welcome to Data Lit, a podcast for educators by educators. And today we're excited to bring you another episode of Data Bytes. So Data Bytes is where we chat with various people within Wake County Public School System about how they use data. In the past, we talked to, band director, grants, transportation, security, so a lot of different views on data. And today we're thrilled to get a glimpse into an essential corner of our school system, but one that I think perhaps doesn't get talked about enough. So we have Paula de Lucca from Child Nutrition Services joining us. Paula, thank you for coming on the show.
Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, so can you tell us briefly just what you do within Wake County Public Schools?
Sure. As senior director, I pretty much provide leadership for a pretty diverse team of about 800 individuals that either work in schools or within our central office are broken into three operating teams. One is business ops that does a lot of our accounting work and some of our grant work. And then we have a school support services team, and that group oversees all of our school operations. And our third team is innovations and program development. And they are responsible actually for taking care of a lot of the research and development on new products, developing menus. They also oversee our central office warehousing and distribution operation. So we are a pretty complex and diverse organization.
Yeah, 800. Yeah, it never ceases to surprise me just how large Wake County is.
Does that include all the cafeteria staff at schools? So that's including all of those individuals as well, right?
Yes, it's the school staff, majority of which, comprises that number. We have about 50 in our central office.
Wow.
And our warehouse staff is just a little under 10.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's a lot of people to track. That's a lot of stuff to track. That's a lot of places to track. So I'm eager to learn more about what kind of data you work with. So let's
one I didn't hear is that you didn't have a food tester. I think I would recommend food tester might be somebody that
I'll take a side gig, just trying out.
Yeah. I didn't, there was a lot of important departments. It's like, the food tester department, I'd want to work for that one.
Yeah, that's a good call. Good call. So that is a lot to track. So data must be a very essential part of your job. So I'm curious, what does data literacy mean to you?
I could probably spend weeks going over the data that we have to track in child nutrition, primarily because we're federally regulated and funded. But there's a couple of very key things that are important to our operation. First of all is cost control. We have to manage our operation as an enterprise, which means we're self-supporting. So we have to have a budget and income that supports our expenses. And every day we walk in the door, we don't know what our income will be. So we are not like a typical school system that gets a budget that's funded by someone who hands over a sum of money. Our funding comes from every meal that we serve, and that's the only source of our funding.
Wow. Never thought about that.
Right. So
in essence, you need kids to eat. Or you need people to eat, to buy meals. Yeah.
And that's been one of the things that has struck me time and time again as we do these Data Byte episodes is just, Mellisa and I have background in the classroom, and I don't know about you, Mellisa, but I never really thought about money when I was in the classroom. But, for all that to work, for our teachers to be able to do their job, we need a lot of other people thinking very carefully and cautiously about money and this in a different way, because like you said, it's not, July something you get your budget.
Right. And so to help others understand sometimes what is perplexing to them, which has to do with the staffing in our schools, there's a very important data point that we use, and that's called our meals per labor hour and meal equivalents. And so there's this federal formula that we use to calculate out how many staffing hours would be appropriate in a school based on the number of meals they serve or the number of additional snacks or beverages that they sell. Those a la carte items we sell are absolutely critical to our program because without those, we certainly wouldn't come close to making our budget because the federal reimbursements we get and the cash payments from students are not sufficient to cover our cost.
We want kids to eat the ice cream.
Yes.
So that's a great point. How do you balance those needs then? So you need kids to eat the ice cream, but at the same time, you don't want too much ice cream funds coming in because you don't want everybody skipping everything up. Do you kind of get what I'm getting at here?
Oh, I know. That's a real big dilemma sometimes, depending on your philosophies about what kids should be eating or what they should be limited to eat. So I think what's really important from a data perspective is that all of our meals and what we serve in our schools is actually data driven, even though you might not look at it that way. And that's because we have to meet certain requirements for caloric ranges. We've got nutrient requirements.
Oh, my goodness.
A lot of different metrics that we have to meet before we can even offer something in a school.
I think a lot of people just think, oh, they don't even think about those things. Because I know that like in the news right now, there's a lot of talk about unhealthy meals in school. So people are not thinking that we do pay attention to that level of detail for kids. Because overall, we all want kids to be healthy. Because when they're healthy, they can learn better. So, yeah.
Right. And I think the other thing that oftentimes is not really truly understood is that we also see ourselves as a teaching institution.
Oh, okay.
And so, there's a lot of items that we offer that people are mistaken by in that they're specifically formulated for school meal programs. And their counterparts out in the retail or in grocery stores is not the same. A primary example, and I hate to use this one, but a Rice Krispies treat out on a store shelf is not the same as the Rice Krispies treat that we serve in schools. Ours are made with whole grain and less sugar to meet certain formulation requirements dictated by federal government.
Interesting.
Are they in the same package or they're not
They
even?
look the same, but the small printing on the package will tell you the difference.
I'm going to be trying to see if I can get one to check it.
Neither of our eyesight is that good, though, Mellisa.
Which is true. Which is true.
So now, related to that, this episode primarily is about data, but I'm curious just the research needs for your department to stay abreast of all these kind of things, especially because nutritional data and research is complicated to make sure that you're not looking at correlation as opposed to actual like causation. Like,
Right.
Is this actually healthier because the nutritional value, or is it that people that tend to eat kale versus like romaine lettuce might have different things about their lifestyle that results in, blah, blah, blah. Like, so how do you stay atop of the research and all that?
Well, one thing we are, I think, really good about is there's quite a number of us that are members of a national association of school nutrition professionals throughout the country. And our national association works very, very closely with USDA. They've got some relationships with folks over in the Institute of Medicine and some other agencies where they're really watchdogs on nutrition for students. So we're able to receive a lot of the research that's done, and that actually formulates what our programs are going to look like once Congress makes decisions, which is about every 4 to 5 years as to what our meal pattern should be or the products that we can offer. But in terms of correlating factors between, what is it that a school meal does or doesn't for a student in terms of academic performance, I can tell you this. There have been studies done that have shown a clear correlation where students have been able to achieve better math scores. There are, some other attributes, I think, lifelong health.
Okay.
Interesting. That makes me think of was it Bonnie Sluter in transportation? And just these things outside the classroom walls that have such a outsized impact on what happens within them.
Yeah. All right. So our second question was about some of the data that you interact with, but I feel as though we've sort of been speaking to some of the data that you interact. You talk about looking at calories and the cost, and you use words. I can't even remember what meals. What was the?
Oh, I wrote, meals per labor hour. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Meals per labor hour.
MPL. Yeah, we got a new acronym in education.
Thank you, Spencer. Yes. So trying to figure out that, is there other data? Because it sounds as though your data is very, very unique. I don't think I've heard it in any other area, which is why we do this podcast. Yeah. Are there other data points or metrics that you interact with that we won't typically think about?
Well, a lot of individuals actually can relate to the necessity for free and reduced eligibles data because that's information that school systems use for other programming.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Direct certification data, which is actually the families that have students that are eligible for FNS benefits, whether it be cash assistance or SNAP. Those are very important. Those are also predictors to what CNS is able to do in terms of leverage other federal programs for our schools and students to benefit from. So those are critical pieces. You touched on participation earlier, and this is always something that I've found fascinating. There's a lot of misnomers around what participation really means.
Okay.
A lot of people talk about school meals, whether it's breakfast or lunch, as a percent of the students' enrollment, or the school's enrollment, I should say. But really, what we use instead, and you talk about data literacy, it's important to understand your data.
For sure.
We use instead the percent of students that participate based on students in attendance, because we can't feed students that aren't at school.
That's challenging.
Right?
Yeah,
And so
yes.
if you have, for example, in some school systems in the country, they might have a much higher non-attendance rate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that can really skew the data for program operators like myself.
Yeah.
And so it is really important to look at the number of students that are actually in attendance.
Do you have to look at that data often? Like, do you have to monitor attendance data, like, I don't know if it's weekly, monthly? Because, I mean, things change. And because you're saying that you're looking at, you don't have a budget that's ahead. It's as the kids come, who's going to eat, who's not going to eat. So do you find yourself having to look at attendance data much more closely to monitor that?
Yeah, actually, per federal law, we have to obtain and record it daily. And
Oh, wow.
daily. And that's why we're so reliant on those individuals in the schools that are capturing that information and reporting it, because we have to take that at the end of the month along with the meal served and report that up to DPI as part of our federal program reporting in order to get our funding.
Okay. So you have this cadence kind of built in terms of when you're collecting and analyzing. Okay.
Yes.
And then, so are there like times set aside each week when you're like, okay, let's all look at the attendance, the money coming in, all that. And then, what kind of decisions do you make on like a week to week, month to month basis for that?
That's a big driver on our forecasting for food purchases.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're over purchasing food, then you've obviously obligated your cash to something that might not move. And if you do that in a very aggressive way, you could end up with product that can't be utilized because it's gone beyond its expiration date.
Yeah.
And that leads to waste, which is a form of cost that you don't want to be inherent in your system.
Right.
So all of those pieces of data are really crucial for not just us in our central office to look at, but our managers. And that's why we spend so much time training our managers before we actually put them into positions in schools. We've got a very comprehensive training program.
So does each school have to have, and please forgive me if this is incorrect, a cafeteria manager?
Most of our schools have a dedicated manager, but as a matter of trying to control costs, we do have some managers that kind of dovetail between two schools.
Okay.
But they're operating at a different type of management capacity, and they've got very strong assistant managers that manage the production and operational pieces for the day.
Okay. All right. It made me think, and I can't go back as my daughter is 16, what her kindergarten registration was. But I'm trying to think, when you say you're looking every day, so when a person comes in, I'm like, do they even ask, will you need the cafeteria? Because I'm like, how do you even know? Like, is that a question they even ask? Will you be of need of our cafeteria services? Like, how is that even a question, or are you trying to guess? Or that everybody who comes in counts? Like one, okay, you come in, you count whether you're going to be using the services or not.
So, our menus are very diverse in that some students like certain items where other students may not appreciate them as well and might not
Vegetables?
participate that day. And so we've got a very comprehensive ERP system in which we record every item that every student takes every time they go through the service line.
Huh.
And then our managers are able to take a look at past records to try to forecast what their current day's needs are.
God.
So they plan and can pull from their freezers and refrigerators the appropriate amount to prepare and serve.
Interesting. So what are some of the most popular meals then? What's the kind of stuff that you can forecast?
I want to guess.
Thursday. Okay. Melissa.
Chicken nuggets.
Yeah. Actually, and I will say this, chicken sandwiches are like
Number
one of the
one.
major faves. Pizza still is one of those mainstays.
That was my second one.
But I will tell you at breakfast, chicken biscuits. I'm telling you,
biscuits?
that's the one thing that kids love.
Not sausage biscuits?
Yeah. And boy, if we don't serve biscuit with the protein, we've failed that day. They really want to have the protein with their biscuit.
Yeah. This is the South. I know.
I'm
they're
curious how much that depends on how much
Where
is
we
it
are?
like the Chick-fil-A and Bojangles factor here compared to I don't know, the Northeast where those aren't.
Well, I can say before coming to Wake County, I came from the Midwest.
Okay.
And I can tell you biscuits were not,
A thing.
they were not the go-to there.
Was it cereal?
Cereal was big, waffles, things like that, waffles and pancakes.
A lot of cheese.
Yeah, lots and lots of cheese, yes.
I didn't know you can even get waffles and pancakes. I'm liking this a little bit more. These kids eating fancy.
Interesting. And again, you got to balance though. Just because that's popular doesn't mean that you should just crank that dial up and do every single day, doing the chicken sandwiches or something.
And we can't. And the reason for that is that particular item comprises so many calories or so much fat or sodium that we have to, over the course of the week, balance it with the other items to meet these standard averages for the week. And we've only got a 50-calorie range.
How
So
much?
if you can imagine trying to figure out, it's like a big puzzle that you've got to put together every week and determine how you're going to get into that range with just the right items, with the items that kids like, and that provide the nutritive benefit. Pretty, like I said, it's a pretty complex endeavor.
All right. So, what is one fact about the data that you work with that our listeners might find interesting? I think we've discovered one
A bit,
that
yeah.
chicken sandwiches or anything chicken related, it sounds like, is a biggie. But what's something else that you think our listeners may not think about but find interesting?
So I'm going to swing into something that's just a little different that has nothing to do with menu, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
I believe one of the things that people are really, really interested in today is our Angel Fund, the district-wide Angel Fund that we launched this year. So, a lot of families have the wherewithal to provide money for their students to make their meal purchases.
Okay.
And sometimes families, whether you have the resources, you might forget to put money on a student's account, or maybe you're a family that is experiencing some kind of a constraint and it's much more financially challenging for you, whether that's your more long-term case or whether it's just a slight disruption for, a short period based on something that's occurred in your family. Our students go through the service line and they're fortunately allowed to charge a certain number of meals. But once they reach that maximum, then they're relegated to finding a source to pay for that meal so they can continue to go through the line and get the meal that they chose.
Yeah.
And they come to school without a bag lunch in tow, right? They're
Right.
there needing our service.
Yeah.
So we launched this district-wide Angel Fund this year, and we were just so grateful to all of the community members and whether it be individuals or organizations that contributed to that fund. The reason why I bring this up as a statistic or a number or data point is because we watch that very closely. We're watching that every week to make sure that all of our cafes have a certain base level in those angel accounts.
Yeah.
And once they start to dip to a certain point, we in our central office replenish those accounts from our central district-wide account. And if we weren't doing our due diligence in this office, we would potentially be putting our students at risk because they would go through the service line in that school would not have the funds that they would need to serve them.
Yeah.
It's such a great example of how creating systems to collect, analyze, and act on data, how imperative that is. Because
Yeah.
without that, then that's a kid that is going hungry, and that's going to impact the classroom interactions, behavior, all that kind of stuff.
It also made me think too, a lot of people think WAKE, right? And so that we don't have a need for an angel fund. And to hear that there is an angel fund almost at every school, because again, when you think of schools and the individuals whom they serve, there might be somebody who is not capable of paying for a meal. And so it is a needed thing. Even in a district like ours, there's still a need for something like an angel fund to help cover. I didn't realize that. I think back in the day when I was teaching, if you didn't have money, you were relegated to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Well, that might have been very, very long ago.
Yes.
And in my history with Wake County, when I came 10 years ago, was they were relegated to just fruits and vegetables. Very nutrient dense.
Sure.
Nothing concerning about standing, with that as far as nutritive value, but it's not what the student wants. And they get embarrassed and they feel shame.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's definitely a much needed resource for kids, to preserve everybody's dignity. And you still are able to get something to eat. Yeah.
Right. And I think also what some individuals may not also understand from time to time is that, we've got this program that allows for students to receive their meals at the reduced price rate or free if their family household size and income qualifies them. But if you're $1 over for the month on the limit that the federal government sets for that, that's a family that candidly is worse off because they're right on the periphery. And, those parents are working hard trying to make better for their families. And yet, because of that limit, they experience that hardship. So what I love about the district-wide Angel Fund is I feel like it helps take care of those that are just kind of toggling back and forth each month with trying to make ends meet.
Yeah. It's a great thing.
Yeah, it's a good example of just, we all have certain accountability systems, be it related to food or assessment, whatever it might be, and then finding ways that you can kind of supplement locally things to maybe fill in some of those gaps. Because no accountability system is going to be just perfectly, put in place. There's nothing else you ever need to do to measure and respond.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that there's also another very, very important metric that we use. And I referred to the direct certification data before. That's the information that gets used to determine whether or not we can put a school on the community eligibility provision.
Ooh, what's that?
Otherwise known as CEP. And this year we were able to extend CEP to 44 schools. That's up from 12 last year.
Oh, wow.
And there were only 7 the prior year and none historically before that. So I've worked really diligently to try to get that program here. And what that does is it allows us to serve free meals to all the students in the school.
Oh, that's what that program is.
So
Okay,
that direct certification data is critical to us. We don't create it, though. We rely on the Department of Health and Human Services to work with the families to review their applications for those benefits that they would be receiving.
Oh, nice.
But a slice of that actually is qualifiers for students that are considered homeless, migrant runaway, or are considered foster students. And so we always encourage people to not feel uncomfortable with applying for benefits. And not feel shamed to apply for benefits, because if they're truly eligible, it will do more to help them, but it will also help their students in school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really had no idea all these different data sources, y'all need like really cool baseball cards with the stats on the back, the MPLH, the CEP, and show off your brilliance. So that's a lot of data that you do work with. Is there any data that you don't currently have but wish that you did?
So we've got this enterprise system. Fortunately, it was something that was really crucial to me when I came to Wake to get launched. And we've been very fortunate in that everything is integrated now. We've got all these different modules, and we're capturing data from all types of sources. Our challenge is that we just don't have the staff to pull information together and manage it to effectuate change. A key example is I have a committee. It's a waste committee that I created here, and we have lists of things that we feel like we could potentially tackle. And when we talk about waste, we talk about time, we talk about materials.
Oh, okay.
All kinds of any kind of waste
not
you
just
can
food
imagine.
waste.
No,
Yeah,
right.
right.
It's every type of waste. And so we've got things that we want to work on, but the hardship is that we don't have people or someone like we really need what I call the waste czar, who is the focused person on going through and analyzing waste, and then being able to have the time to go further out and find root causes and address the root causes so systemically we can tackle things at large scale for large scale improvement. And if there were anything I think that we could use, it would be that.
And that makes me think of the classroom connection that, every year that there is more and more data, for our classroom teachers, and that is a wonderful thing. But we need to also make sure that we're developing systems and protocols and carving out time so that people can actually analyze it and act on it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Paul. This was really fascinating. I really didn't know much about this world half an hour ago, so thank you for informing us about this.
Very glad to have been able to be of help where I can.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you also to Ligon Middle School's Alex Scott for providing the theme music for this episode. If y'all want to learn more, you can go to our website at www.wcpss.net/datalit, and feel free to contact us at datalit@wcpss.net, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.